what's up, hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be talking about some old favorite series that I really want to reread. Now, I am a lover of rereading books. I know there are a ton of people out there that have no desire to encounter the same story a second, third, or even fourth time, and that's cool, but I personally love going back into my favorite books, discovering something new every single time I reread it. And while I reread sort of the same two series every year, always Harry Potter, always The Mortal Instruments, and sometimes The Infernal Devices and The Dark Artifices, but beyond that, I don't really reread books as much because I'm always consumed with the new books that I want to experience for the first time. So I thought it would be fun to take some time to travel down memory lane, talk about some series that I really loved a few years ago that have stuck with me and I really want to reread a second time in the near future. The first series I would like to reread is The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hodkin. This is a paranormal young adult series about a girl named Mara who wakes up in a hospital with no memory of the events that occurred that left all of her friends dead but herself unharmed. This series just has a very unique, creepy, gritty, and dark vibe that I really loved when I first read this series back in 2014. It's really beloved by a lot of my very first booktube friends whom I still have good relationships with to this day, and whenever we talk about Mara Dyer, it's just like reflecting on a really nice memory because we all read it around the same time and all loved it so much. Unfortunately, with the Mara Dyer series, I did not like the final installment very much. I thought it was really boring and just like did not hold up the same atmosphere and all of the excitement I felt about the first two books. So I was really let down by book 3, but I'm super curious as to how I would feel about it many years later. It's definitely a series that has not left my mind since I finished it, and I think it would be a really compelling story to revisit. The next series that I absolutely love and would like to reread is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. The Darkest Minds is like the classic YA booktube dystopian story that we've all read and loved. This book takes place during a time where an illness has basically wiped out the majority of kids under the age of 12, and those who have survived gained superpowers and abilities, so the government has put them into camps so that they are away from the public and can be controlled. So it's just your typical teens being badass, fighting a corrupt government, also with some swoony romance and diverse characters, and I love this series so much. I still consider it one of my absolute favorites. It is a fantastic book about politics and romance and friendship and learning to accept yourselves and doing what's right, empowering teens, just all of the things that I love in books. With the release of the movie this past summer, as well as the fourth installment in the series that takes place from a different character's perspective, The Darkest Minds is another one I just can't seem to get out of my head, and I feel like I would really enjoy reading it a second time. The next series I really want to reread is Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. Another absolutely iconic YA urban fantasy story about a school of vampires who have different abilities and these vampires who protect them, and just everything I loved in YA when I was like 18, 19. If you followed me back in 2015, you know my obsession with Vampire Academy. Like, if you've joined my channel recently, 2018 Emma is to Renegades as 2015 Emma is to Vampire Academy. I was so consumed with this story. I marathoned the last 5 books in this series in like 2 weeks. I could not put them down. It took over every aspect of my life where I just could not stop thinking about how much I loved this world and magic system and characters and relationships. This book had no fault. That being said, I definitely am a little bit afraid that if I were to reread Vampire Academy, I just wouldn't enjoy it as much because I have many more critical thinking skills than I did when I read it, and back then I was just so focused on the entertaining plot and swoony romance. There are so many more things that I consider when reading now that definitely could have the potential to impact my reading experience. So while Vampire Academy might be a little bit challenging for me thinking back on my past opinions and maybe having to change them, I still think I would come out loving the series and having a great time experiencing it again. The next series I would like to reread is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Everybody knows about The Hunger Games. It is probably one of the biggest young adult series to have ever been produced and adapted into a major film franchise. I read The Hunger Games at a very significant point in my reading life when I had first just rediscovered YA at 17, and I had read The Mortal Instruments like 4 times and finally decided it was time for me to try a different story. It's still so ridiculous when I talk about it. But The Hunger Games was the first series that I picked up, and I had been putting off reading The Hunger Games for a very long time because for some reason I felt like I was betraying Harry Potter. Like, the 3 big YA series at the time were Harry Potter, Twilight, and then The Hunger Games, and because The Hunger Games came after these 2 series that really influenced my adolescence and childhood, I just felt like I was like giving up to the new trends and abandoning my love for Harry Potter, which like obviously is not a thing. But at the time, The Hunger Games was just so unique and refreshing to me because I had never read anything like it, and I really enjoyed my time reading it. I have so many good memories attached to the series despite the fact that I don't really mention it a lot on my channel anymore. The Hunger Games is another series that I feel like I just couldn't enjoy as much as I did when I was a teenager because of all of those conditions that were in place for me to really love it at that time. But that being said, I think I would still really enjoy rereading it for a second time and being able to examine it as an adult, which is clearly a theme in a lot of these books that I want to reread. I want to see how differently I feel about it and what I still love about it, and The Hunger Games is definitely one I'd like to reread at some point. The next series I would like to reread is The Archived by Victoria Schwab. The Archived holds a really special place in my heart. When I think of the series and my time reading it, I just feel all warm and fuzzy inside. The Archived follows a girl named Mac, who is a keeper of histories, which means she's essentially in charge of guarding the energy and memories of spirits. And so things get pretty dangerous when Mac realizes that there is someone who is deliberately altering the memories of spirits and letting them loose into the real world, and Mac has to get a handle on it before things turn really bad. Sort of similar to Dyer, it is just a fun, thrilling paranormal story. The characters are very eclectic. The atmosphere of the novel is really tangible and unique. And from what I remember, I really loved the plot of the story as well. So it was just like a recipe for a series that I would absolutely love. Read book 1, read book 2, and just have thought about it for many, many years now. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure Victoria Schwab has said that no matter how much she wants to write a book 3 of The Archived, it's probably never going to come out, so I don't think we will ever have a finished series for this, which is really, really upsetting because it's so good. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this before because it seems to be a pretty rare occurrence, but like knowing you will probably never get the final installment in a series is really, really sad, and I feel like I just really need to grip onto whatever I have left of the Archive series and just reread them again. I feel like the Archive would actually make for a really fun reread around Halloween time next year. I know that's like a year away, but I feel like this is definitely a book that I do want to push myself to reread sooner than later because I loved it so much at the time, and I feel like as an adult I'd still really, really enjoy it. The next series I really want to reread is The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. The Lunar Chronicles is an absolutely fan-freaking-tabulous YA science fiction story. It is essentially 4 different retellings of classic fairy tales where all of the stories are interwoven into this awesome space setting. I really loved The Lunar Chronicles when I first read them. This is another series that has an extremely developed plot, very interesting characters, fantastic character relationships, and just so much magic to it that I could not help but love it when I read it around the time that I was still first discovering the genre of young adult. I've become a pretty big fan of Marissa Meyer over the years. I read the Lunar Chronicles series and the spin-off novella Fairest. I've also read Heartless, which is her other retelling, and now I am just the spokeswoman for Renegades. I even got to interview Marissa Meyer not too long ago, so check out that video in the description if you want to. She really is probably one of my most read authors, and I just love everything she puts out. So I think it would be really interesting to reread the first series that I read from her a couple of years later. One perk of being a huge Marissa Meyer fan and reading all of her books is that all of her audiobooks are narrated by my favorite audiobook narrator, who is Rebecca Solar. So I feel like I could totally have a super fun audiobook listening marathon for this series, and I would just love every second of it. And the final series that I really want to reread is is not only the oldest of this video that I'm talking about, but some of the oldest books that I own and have read, because I read them way before BookTube was even a thing, and that is A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. A Series of Unfortunate Events was a huge part of my childhood. This is one of the first series other than Harry Potter that I really read as they were being published, and like every year when I went to the Scholastic Book Fair, there was a new Series of Unfortunate Events book for me to get and read. A Series of Unfortunate Events is this like 13 book series about these 3 orphans who come with a great fortune, and there is this super distant relative that is after them and wants to take all of their money. From what I remember, the ironic dark humor of this series was so great, and as a child I definitely believe I did not even scratch the surface of it, so I would love to reread it well over a decade later and see what I think of it as an adult, because I think it would still be really applicable to what I like to read. I believe I have read the majority of A Series of Unfortunate Events at least twice, because I do have distinct memories of rereading it, but the thing is I never actually finished this series. I only have up until book 11, so I think I've read books 1 through 11 like twice, but I haven't read books 12 or 13 yet, and it is time. Like, I really need to finish it and I really want to. So I think it would be super fun if I just like cut out a chunk of time to only read A Series of Unfortunate Events and just fly through them. They're all pretty short, and I think they would be so easy to fly through, not just in the way that it's written, but also because I know as soon as I start the series, all I'm gonna want to do is read it. So I'm very hopeful that sometime in the future I will be able to start rereading A Series of Unfortunate Events and finally finish it. I think it would just, I would feel so accomplished if I finally got to the end of the series after so many years. But this is another one that I really hope to reread at some point. So that really concludes my video on old favorite series that I want to reread. I definitely do not reread as much as I want to. I feel like I really should dedicate more time to rereading old favorites, because it is something that is so important to me. In the comments below, I would love to know, what books do you want to reread? Tell me about some books that you do reread all the time, if you're someone like me that has yearly rereads of certain books, or just like what books have you been wanting to read for so long and just have been too consumed with the new releases to really pay them any mind. I would love to know, but that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!